Hey, welcome back guys. We're here with the next tier list video for Pokemon TCG Pocket, and this time we're going to be going through these Psychic type Pokemon. So again, there aren't too many Psychic Pokemon in the game right now, but we can take a look at what we got here and start to give the rundown. I got three tiers here, solid, mid, bulk, and again, self-explanatory. You probably get the idea. You don't want bulk, you want some stuff that's solid. Let's get right into it and start off with the bulk. So the first Pokemon going into the bulk bin is going to be Clefable. Clefable is very basic, 1 energy, 40 damage, not super high output for a stage 1, no additional effects, 100 HP is not nothing, it's nothing special. Overall, I'm not particularly impressed, and that's why it's going to be the bulk bin. Next up is Mr. Mime, takes 20 less damage after he pulls off his attack, has a 80 HP, and is a basic Pokemon. Takes 2 energy to attack for 30. It's okay, but I wouldn't really think it's worth putting on the in the active because the damage output is just so low for 2 energy. Even with the minus 20, you're not going to be tanking out every single attack that comes your way. Eventually, they're going to get something that does more damage. He's just not going to cut it. Next up is Mewtwo, just regular Mewtwo, not EX. 4 energy, discard 2 to pull off this attack, and then does 120. So you're already putting a heavy investment on this guy that's going to do 120. It's good damage, but it's not worth it, and even then, it's difficult to get the 4 energy on him. That being said, out of all of the decks, types, this is the one deck type that will have the easiest energy acceleration, besides potentially water, which doesn't need any set but is less consistent. Even then, there are better options for this inside of the Psychic tier that we have here, so we're not going to use this particular Mewtwo. Next up is Golurk, who suffers from a similar problem, but not in the same way. So he takes 4 energy, so it does take a while to get him cooking. After you get the energy on him, it does stick on him, but it's very flippy. You're flipping 2 coins, does 100 for each. And again, it's a stage 1, so you just evolve into him. He's got pretty good HP at 140, but those coin flips for damage are just inconsistent. Sometimes you'll just lose games if you're having bad luck, and I don't think you want to do that usually, unless you're feeling like a gambler that day. And, for some people, this is going to be the kind of deck they love. Flip coins, see if you can do big damage. But if you're looking for consistency, and that's what I'm looking for in this tier list, then I don't think it's going to do it, and so that's why it's in bulk. I could potentially see it in mid, though. It is, if again, I'm not ranking the bulk in the bottom here, but, if you were to put it, it would be somewhere near the top because it is not horrible. I just don't think it's worth the investment. Going up onto mid, I think that Gengar is going to be sitting there at the bottom of mid. I think it's a shame that they only give him 50 damage. It does have the nice secondary effect that they can't use supporters during the next turn, which is very, very strong, because in a game where there's very, very few draw options, that could be a potential good way to stop your opponent from getting any progress. But 50 damage is not amazing on a stage 2. You'd hope that they at least give him 60. I think they should have given him 60. Doesn't have any ability, but, you know, it is what it is, and that's why he's in mid tier. Next up, we're going to put Jinx in there after that. Jinx is okay. It can be a potential way to stop certain decks or put good damage on certain decks that require a lot of energy in their Pokemon. So something like Blastoise, something like Charizard, something like Mewtwo, something like I don't know. Let's see. The list goes on. Basically, the way it works is you put 2 energy on them, and it does it does 30 damage plus an additional 20 damage for every other energy on your opponent's Pokemon. So, if you get enough, if the opponent starts stacking everything up, and you're somehow holding on, you can pull this guy out, and maybe you can get a decent amount of damage onto him. Now, I don't think it's amazing because I think 20 damage is not enough for the kind of HP that the guys that require 4 energies to attack is. So it's not crazy, but it could be useful in the right circumstances. And it's not too difficult of a task to get 2 psychic energy onto a Pokemon in this game, given that Gardevoir, which we'll see later, is very, very good at that. Next up, we have Subat. It was just kind of okay. 2 energy, 60 on a stage 1. Now, this is decent. Again, it's 1 evolution to get to him, so he's not too bad. 2 energy to get 60 is okay amount of damage. It's not nothing to write home about, but it's consistent and it's okay. I think mid is a fair place to put it. Next up, we're going to put Slowbro down. So Slowbro is a high energy cost, stage 1. Does 80 damage. Really good damage, honestly. But given, again, for other types, not as much, but for Psychic, it's pretty good. because again, you have that easy energy acceleration. 130 is pretty solid HP, and it only takes one evolution to get to him, so not bad, not bad. Next up, we're going to have Hypno. Now, Hypno is probably one of the coolest cards, I think, in the game. I just don't know if it's particularly amazing. So it has the ability Sleep Pendulum, which you flip a coin, and if you get heads, you put your opponent to sleep. Now, this is happening on your turn, which means that during the pass, they'll have another flip to wake up. So that means if they flip tails 2 times, they're asleep and their Pokemon isn't doing anything the next turn. Now, I've already talked about before how strong sleep is in other videos. The problem here is that you're looking at 2 coins, so you got about a 25% chance of this actually working. Now, this is something you can just do every single turn, so it's not too bad, and it's only a stage 1 to evolve into this guy. So it's not a horrible option. It's a nice little something you can put on the bench, and maybe it works out for you, maybe it doesn't. I think most of the time it's not going to be great, but sometimes it might work out in your favor, and it doesn't have to be in the active, so it's not bulk. It's just not consistent enough to be solid. I think it's an interesting card, though, nonetheless, and that's why it's going to end up in mid. And the last card we have here in mid is Alakazam. Now, Alakazam is pretty good. Stage 2, got evolve to get into it, 3 energy, does 60 damage at base, and then 30 additional damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So, very similar to Jinx, except the damage output is higher, and you have a stronger base to go off of. So this Pokemon will actually start chunking, and one that has like 4 or 3 energy onto them. Because they got 3 energy onto them, you're doing 150. That's really good. 150 or higher that's when you start getting to the massive damage. And for 3 energy on a Psychic, that's pretty consistent, given that as long as you tie Gardevoir. And then the hard part is that you're looking at 2 stage 2 Pokemon in the same deck. So maybe it's not super consistent. And that will have to be tested later on the line. If it's found to be very consistent, this guy could be really solid. If it's not that consistent, then I think mid is a very fair place to put it, which is why he's at the top of mid. I think it's kind of in that teetering zone of could it be solid, could be mid. I don't know. It takes some testing, and we'll have to see as time goes on to see how this guy plays out. Moving on to the solid tier. We have 3 guys remaining. And I'm going to start off with Mewtwo. Now, Mewtwo is a really high damage outputter. He's an EX guy, 150 HP is pretty solid. He's got 2 attacks, 2 for 50, 4 for 150, then discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. So kind of similar to Charizard, except unlike Charizard, there actually is decent and consistent energy acceleration for Psychic. So, the ideal game plan for this is you play this with Gardevoir, accelerate the energy to it, attack, and then the next turn you accelerate again and you swing again. This deck can be really good if you can set up your Gardevoir. If you can't set up your Gardevoir, this guy's basically bulk. But he does have that nice secondary attack for 2 for 50, which is not too bad, honestly. So I think that's why he's going to end up in solid for me. Overall, this guy seems decent. Ideally, you get the 150 off, but if you don't, you have a backup plan. That's not nothing for damage. 50 will KO, and like 2 hits most basic Pokemon and some stage 1s. So I think he's pretty solid. The next solid card that we have is Gengar EX, which has the very interesting ability Shadowy Spellbind. Now, this is an ability that, as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent cannot use any supporter cards from their hand. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm not exactly sure how good this effect is inside of Pokemon Pocket as of right now. The reason for that is that there are not a whole lot of supporter cards that are really useful. So this will turn off mostly Sabrina. That'll stop your opponent from gusting. This will turn off Professor's Research to stop them from drawing cards, and maybe Misty to stop them from accelerating energy to their water Pokemon. Those are the main 3 you're probably going to be using. Maybe Giovanni to turn off a little bit of extra damage. Overall, this card is very interesting if you can get it out probably on your 3rd turn. So if you can get this consistently. The problem is, again, searching out stuff for a fully evolved Pokemon is a bit difficult in this game, admittedly. It does have the secondary thing that it has an attack, which is, 3 energy for 100 damage, which is okay. It is not terrible damage for a stage 2. It'd be nice if it was a little bit higher, but it's not so bad, honestly. Overall, I think this guy is very, very good. It also has very solid HP at 170, which will survive most hits from stuff in the game, aside from like Charizard, basically. So this guy is pretty strong. Overall, I think he is very solid. I think he would be at the top of this tier if it wasn't for our next Pokemon, which is Gardevoir. Now, Gardevoir is what I would consider to be the best energy accelerator in the game as of right now, mostly because there are not very many options. So you kind of got to take what you can get. It is a stage 2 Pokemon, so it is a bit tricky to get out. But once you get it out, the payout is very good. It once during your turn, you can take 1 psychic energy from your energy zone and attach it to the Pokemon to the psychic Pokemon in the active spot. So this pairs really well with stuff like Gardevoir, stuff like Slowbro, stuff like Alakazam, stuff like Gengar. Now, again, if you start putting a bunch of full evolution lines into your deck's going to be a lot more inconsistent. So maybe you want to play this with Mewtwo. This is probably meant to be played with Mewtwo, realistically. But you could put stuff in there like Slowbro or like Swoobat as a secondary attack option, and I think this would pair very well with it. And I think the more cards that get released down the line, you'll have more options, the better this card will get. But we'll see. Again, that is the tier list for today, though. And I gotta say thank you very much all for watching. If you have any different opinions, please let me know in the comments down below. If you think I got something wrong, please tell me, and maybe it'll sway my opinion, move stuff around. I'm always open to new strategies and ideas, so please let me know. And thank you for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.